'Tis the season to be jolly. I have another package. If I can get in it. And I think I know what this is. It's another Hyperlow. Right, cheers Rich for these. These are little Hyperlow Brain 3D, I think, crossfire connectors. So what we've got here is the new Vert V2. This kind of came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't expecting this one, but when I saw the changes that he'd made, I was pretty excited about it. If you look up here, you'll see a review of the Vert Freestyle V1, and I've also got the Vert Race on this channel as well. And the Vert Freestyle was a frame that I initially absolutely loved, but after building it, I had quite a lot of issues with my build, because I was using one of these silly all-in-one flight controllers and ESCs, and it gave me nothing but jip. So I had to sort of rebuild mine, or should I say take it apart, loads of times. And with the initial, with the original Verts, to do that was frankly an absolute pain in the arse. And I ended up sort of getting really sort of frustrated with the quad itself, not because of anything wrong with the frame. The frame was stunning. The quad actually flew amazingly well for the 5 minutes before it went wrong. But in the end, I gave it away to a fellow Hyperlow pilot who subscribes to me and couldn't get some parts that he needed, so I gave him both my Race and my Vert Freestyle. And this guy, being the V2, should solve a lot of the issues that I had, because on the original, when you put it together, you had to take the top plate or the bottom plate off to get inside, and as soon as you did, all the arms fell off and everything ended up dangling everywhere, and I generally found it an absolute pain, which was a shame, because as I said, when it flew really, it's probably the best flying quad I've ever really flown, but it did have props in view on your FPV feed, and it kind of my frames sat with me for a few months before, probably longer than that actually, 4 or 5, 6 months before I gave them away, and during that time I kept looking at them and wanting to build them, but never could have really afford the time to faff with them. So I'm hoping that this guy will solve those issues and give me, you know, the Vert Freestyle that I absolutely loved, along with an easier access to the internal components. So as normal, what I'll do is I'll put it together and we'll see what we've got. Right, so here we have the frame mostly built up. I haven't put the action cam mount on, which is really nice, and as I said initially, this also will hold a Hero 7 or similar, and you just simply slots through the standoffs to hold your camera in place. So this is very similar to the original Vert, with quite a few design tweaks. So the silhouette of it is pretty much the same. We've got this 2mm top plate, one piece. We've got this battery tray, which is basically there to allow for a very slender top plate. But what it also does is allow you to mount your battery straps like so, without disturbing your stack inside, or run your battery toilet tank style, as people are starting to do at the moment. So you can kind of run your battery that way for apparently improved CG, which some people do. Not really something that floats my boat. And as I said, obviously the action cam ramp just sits at the front like that. The major changes are we've got braces. So the rear brace is just one solid piece, and if we turn the frame over so you can see, it just simply sandwiches between the rear motor mounts, and you would just basically screw your motors in, and this would essentially just give it some lateral rigidity if you're sort of hitting things. When you're screwing in your motors, I would use washers, just to give a bit of extra protection to your motor mounts. But apart from that, that's pretty straightforward. The front part of it is more interesting. This front brace I really like. The original frame didn't have this, and I haven't heard too many reports of breakages, but what this is designed to do is really just strengthen up these slender front arms. And these front arms, as you can see, are comprised of essentially two parts, both 5mm thick, and they're attached via a screw at the end, which now goes into one of these self-locking nuts. Not self-locking nuts, they used to be self-locking nuts, but now they're these sort of countersunk nuts, which work really well. I've had these on the CG, and they don't come loose, so that's a welcome change. But the thing I like is these front arms. If I think back to my smooth operator, which had a front brace which was straight across, while that front brace could help to protect from frontal impacts, when it did crack, or when one of your arms cracked, it kind of acted as a lever, because it wasn't really attached to anything by the front section. It kind of acted as a lever and could potentially break a lot of other parts. On mine, it brought the entire front nose part as it swings around. Whereas here, because it's attached to essentially just these front standoffs, if this front section fails, it's kind of done its job, and this arm isn't going to take out, you know, the rest of this front part when it goes. And it also means that when you're crashing, you're allowing, you know, the load bearing part to be this front part of the arms, as opposed to this long thing in the middle. So I really like the idea of it. Now obviously the braces themselves are optional. You don't have to run them, but given I'm a freestyler and not a racer, I certainly will be running them. But the rest of it is kind of similar to what it was before. Because this is a mid-mount, you would generally tend to build it sort of upside down. So you would mount your ESC and then your flight controller, etc. At the front, we've got space for a micro camera, and you get mounts for a micro camera, and also mounts for antenna tubes, should you wish to use them. And we've got obviously battery pads for the LiPo and for your VTX antenna at the bike. Things start sort of getting more interesting when you get to the underside, because as I said initially, one of my big bugbears of this is, on the original, is because you had to unscrew everything to take the top or the bottom plate off. The arms fell everywhere and it became an absolute nightmare. So on this particular version, we've got a rather simple solution, which is, I'm guessing, an idea which came around following the smooth operator. And the smooth operator was heavily influenced by the Hyperlow CG and the other low slung Hyperlows. So these kind of frames sort of influence each other. But essentially, all you have to do to get at your components now is just loosen these 4 screws slightly, and then undo the center screws. So we've got 4 long screws here, and if we undo these 4 long screws, which also hold one of the 2 screws that holds on each arm, if I just unscrew this one, sorry, it probably would have been better to do this off camera. You'll see that if I just move this out of the way, and the same with these, so we've got these little plates You don't really have to use these, to be honest with you. The original Smooth Operator had a similar optional plates, but these are just there for safety precautions. Just tighten this up. You can see this entire section comes out of the way, and as simple as that, you could solve my entire problems with the initial Vert, which was frankly a pig to work on. In addition, you'll notice these component trays, 3D printed component trays, and if you look at the back, you'll notice that these are kind of spaced, so you can mount these at whatever sort of height that you want to. And the idea with these component trays, if I just find some sort of flight controller, or should I say VTX, because this is obviously the top, they're designed that you would just attach your components to them. So in this case, you could attach your VTX via these holes, or you could do it the opposite way round and attach it on the top. And at the front, obviously you can do the same thing, and obviously it's up to you how high you have these. The actual sort of spacers on them are kind of the standard flight controller spacer size mounts. So what it allows you to do is, you stick your VTX in, get it over there, you stick your VTX in and you can run your wires underneath, which basically should help eliminate some noise, because you haven't got your wires touching the bottom of your VTX or whatever else you've got in here, and just really keeps a nice clean build. Obviously depending on which way you build it, you have it above or below, or however way you want it to. So I think in terms of the frame itself, it's kind of really answered. I loved the original one. If you see my review, I sort of really fell in love with it. And then later on in sort of waffle videos, I kind of said it was, getting up my backside a little bit. And it was really starting to bug me because of the amount of work I was having to do on mine. And I think because this guy solves this in such a simple way, much simpler actually than the Smooth Operator, and much better access, because you've pretty much got access to everything. Because it solves it in such a simple way, it really doesn't leave me with anything to complain about. Flight controller mount on this is 30.5, so we haven't got 20mm stack mount, but of course you could always just use one of those spacer things which converts it across. So my initial verdict is absolutely love it. We've got 10mm arms, 2 5mm pieces, 2mm bottom plate, 2mm top plate, 1.5mm battery plate, and it comes with this rather lovely horned GoPro Session mount as well. The only thing to mention with these is if you run your Session, you'll have to use like a silicone case for it as opposed to a 3D printed one, or you'll have to sort of bend these out a bit because it does grip it pretty tight. So yeah, so I'm really chuffed with this guy, and I'm really looking forward to building mine. In terms of weight, it isn't going to be the lightest thing that you've ever seen because the amount of bits and bobs and braces, etc. But if we give it away, let's see what it comes in at. So if we just put this on here, and again I've kind of used long steel screws inside, so you can shave a gram or two off that way if you wanted to. So if I just put it on here and put the rear brace on as well, and these bolts, see we've got 135, which is a pretty standard sort of freestyle weight. And if you were to run it without the braces, how much does that weigh? That weighs sort of 6.7. It's a little bit smaller than the front one, so you're probably going to save another sort of 7-8 grams by removing the front braces as well. So you're probably going to take that what did I say, 1, 2, 4, yeah, you're going to sort of knock off another sort of 15, 16 grams of weight by not using the braces. And of course you can just use the front braces and not the back. This one has been built in a 15mm stack, and you'll also notice that the front arms have got the spacer at the top. You should be building this the other way around. So basically when I was building mine, I should have put the rear spacers at the bottom and the front spacers at the top to basically bring the rear arms up. But I was trying to figure mine as I went along, so I'll sort that out at a later date by running the back arms slightly higher up and using this spacer at the bottom. It just really helps eliminate a little bit of dirty air from your rear motors, which tend to sort of have to work harder because they're always sitting in your own prop wash, and it should just help eliminate a little bit of prop wash. But there you go. So I think my verdict on this is, I think it's one hell of a sexy freestyle frame, and it can be made into a pretty stonking race frame. Again, like its predecessor, because we've got a relatively low stack, and I said obviously this is 15mm, you can also make it a 10mm stack by removing these spacers, but just be aware you can't run the front braces if you do that. But yeah, like the original, because this is a stretched X as opposed to, you know, a true X like the RS or a squashed X, like a lot of freestyle frames, what this is really designed to do is go fast, and the entire profile of it is slender, just to try and cut wind resistance. So the benefit of a stretched X, more of a racing arm geometry, is it just allows you to get your nose further down and gives you a little bit more authority in pitch. And because you're running further, your nose further down, and the rear motors are farther away from the front motors than they would be in a squash configuration, it just helps run faster and smoother. And the benefit of a mid-mount, of course, is it just brings the whole centre of gravity that much lower down to the same plane as your props are on, which allows for easier tuning and basically a more neutral balance, because your motors aren't fighting when you come into flip and roll, a sort of pendulum effect of your battery sat on top. So yeah, so top marks from me. As I said, this is certainly one I'll be excited to build up. I will be running mine with the braces, or certainly the front braces. I haven't decided on the rear brace yet, and I'm hoping that mine will be running the iFlight Zing 2208 motors, which I'm told I should be able to get once they're in stock again, which should be in about a week's time. In terms of flight controllers and ESCs, I haven't thought that far. I've got an iFlight 20 by 26S stack, or so they claim, to test. So I might bodge it up into here and just give it some stress testing, because 20 by 20 ESCs with big claims like the HGLRC one, etc., don't sort of tend to last very long in my hands. They fly absolutely fine, but the minute you get stuck in a tree or something like that and you need to rev your motors and your props are spinning and they can't spin properly because you're hitting branches, etc., they tend to fry themselves. So yeah, so I'll be testing that. But you know, like all of these sort of lowish stacks, you just want a 4-in-1 ESC and a relatively slender flight controller. The Pyro F4 OSD is really the number one choice for this guy, certainly if you're going on a 10mm build, because it's really slender. But yeah, not a particularly difficult build, tons of access via this rather nifty opening bottom plate. And again, it's really just whether you're happy to run stretched X, because you'll have a bit of props in view, unless you want a crazy high GoPro angle, but the benefits in flight characteristics should be worth it. So yeah, there we go. I absolutely love mine. Be interesting to see how it versus how how it goes compared to my RS, which is in bits because my flight controller has decided to stop working. Yeah, and just another stunning frame from Hyperlow. So as always, thanks to Rich for sending. I'll probably do a build overview on this one because it's a little bit more complicated than a standard frame, but it probably won't be for some few weeks at the earliest until I get my components together. But yeah, cheers for watching. Thanks to Rich for sending. Love this part of it, love the front brace, and the rest of it is kind of business as normal. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.